Hey everybody, whether you're tailgating or it's just that time of year to do a lot of grilling, we've got an expert with us today to give us incredible tips on how to do it right and get the best product every single time. The executive chef of Smoke, a fabulous new restaurant by the way. And Brian is a former instructor at the Culinary Institute of America. And if you go there as a student and take a course on barbecue, you wrote the book.
I did. I wrote the book on barbecue.
So we're in the presence of an expert here. So you're going to start out and show us some of the techniques, some of the simple basics that once you get these down, the rest of it, you have a lot more chance of a really great, successful meat, right?
Yes, correct. It's a lot with cooking. You find a lot of it has to do with the preparation. So the preparation, the things that you do early in the game, like making good beans, the things you do early in the game are going to reap rewards in the end. And so with brisket being a long cooking process, of course there's going to be a lot of prep work involved and things that you want to set yourself up correctly for.
Okay, and we're going to start with how to do the rub properly.
Right, exactly. What I'm going to do here is I'm going to basically dry the brisket completely down, because with smoke, and water, they don't really mix. The smoke will not permeate through the water barrier. Okay. And another big mistake that people do is they like to rub their briskets down hours in advance. And what that does is that just brings water to the surface. So here we go all over again. We're basically creating a water barrier where the smoke can't penetrate.
So do your rub right before you're ready to
Crucial.
Smoke it.
And it's one of the biggest mistakes that a lot of barbecue enthusiasts make. They think that they're marinating or creating some sort of a softening of the skin, if you will, which is absolutely false. It's actually not doing anything but bringing moisture to the surface, which you do not want in the beginning stages of the barbecue process.
All right.
First thing you're going to want to do for sure is you're definitely going to want to use a fresh towel and pat down the brisket as much as possible.
So we're talking major drying.
Oh, major drying. And you can even do this a day out if you wanted to, or hours out, and put it back into your cooler wrapped in towels. And I do the same thing with my turkeys, my pork butts, everything. The more you can get off, the better.
All right.
What's also important to do is when you design your rubs, we make our own rubs here at Smoke, we don't add salt to them. We want to add salt separately. Okay?
Really?
So it's just a different layer of flavor. So you got your rubs for flavoring and color, your salt again for seasoning. So I'm going to just sprinkle salt pretty aggressively. Again, you can't get salt into the middle of the meat unless you're doing like an injection or something. So you're really going to want to salt liberally on the outside and really create that salt crust, if you will. Again, now moisture is immediately starting to come up to the surface. We've got a good hour and a half before we've actually been detrimental to our brisket. The other thing I want to nail home to you is I don't rub this in. We call them rubs, but you don't really rub them in. Professional barbecue enthusiasts and professional chefs, we don't massage stuff in too much.
I did not know that.
With cures and things like that, you can. Now, you can do a light patting here and there, but again, you're coating the outer surface. And you really, again, want to hit it hard, as we like to say. Also, I like to bring my brisket up to room temperature. So I'll pull it out 2 hours prior to doing this. It's perfectly safe. As long as you don't pass that magical 4-hour mark and you get into the smoker, you're perfectly fine. But again, that's going to help you save energy in the smoker and be able to bring it up to that 70 degrees and not have to spend fire to do that.
All right. How long in the smoker?
It's going to be a while. We're probably going to go about 12 hours on this one.
So some 12 hours later?
Yeah, 12 hours later, and we've let this completely rest down a little bit so it's not steaming hot anymore. But what we've done is basically we put it in there fat side down, okay? And so that's a little bit different, a little unorthodox. Some chefs are against that. They all believe that it's fat side up so it's self-based. I found that actually doesn't happen. The fat does not melt that way. So I want to put direct heat on it, so I'm going to put it fat side down and let that render the fat up, much like a duck breast or some bacon in a pan. It'll kind of melt that fat down. Again, I like mine very dark. Now, some people like to wrap, okay? And I don't have a problem with wrapping. I'll start to wrap my briskets at about 160 degrees. And remember, you don't want to go by touch, you don't want to go by look and feel or anything like that. Let's use real science. 106 degrees will not lie to you. So you want to put a thermometer in there. As soon as it hits 160, you can do a little light spritz of something that you want to put flavorful on there, and then you'll wrap it in parchment paper, not foil.
So is the wrapping process in the parchment to let it rest?
The wrapping, it's to prevent darkening of the brisket.
But parchment instead of foil?
Correct. Parchment's going to breathe. It's going to allow smoke to penetrate.
Okay.
Okay. It's also going to allow steam to come off. Okay.
All right.
If you put foil on there, you're basically starting a pot roast officially at that point. You're starting to braise at that point. So you're going to start collecting juices, you're going to braise it, which isn't going to be a bad thing. It's just not the gold standard of barbecue. It's not the gold standard.
And we
of
want the
brisket.
gold standard.
We want the gold standard if all possible.
Okay.
So that's really important.
So time to cut the brisket.
Time to cut the brisket. I'm going to go ahead and cut it into smaller, I call them primals. That's probably not a correct term, but I like to call them primals so that we can divide up the brisket into what people want. Some people like fatty brisket, some people like lean brisket. Some people like somewhere in between. There's different little sweet spots in the brisket. So there's a lot of intermuscular fat here. Remember, this is the peck of the cow, for lack of a better word. So it holds 60% of the meat. So there's lots of energy that transfers through this when the animal's moving. What we're going to do is we're going to try to find the top cap here, and you can find that by wiggling it back and forth, and you'll be able to see some of the creases create. Again, having this thick crust is really helping me identify where that is, and you're going to want to cut through that. As you rock it back and forth, you can see where that's moving. So it's a little bit of guesswork, but I'm going to slip my knife in there, and you can see it's just effortless.
That's where the majority of the fat is.
Right. This is the fat, if I'm doing it correctly, which I am, this is right where the fat connects the two muscles.
Ah, got it.
And you can see how I'm pulling it apart quite easily. Now you can see it's slicing very gently, and that's not an issue, but it's not shredding. You don't want it to shred, okay? And the reason being is that shreddable meat is then you're getting into the pot roast world. So I didn't mention this before, but what you want to pull this out at about 205. That's the sweet spot, and that's going to allow some carryover cooking to happen. You're going to let it rest for an hour before you even touch it. You don't want it to be piping hot on that. So I've removed that top part, and this is also where you're going to find a lot of your burnt ends. So if you're into burnt ends, which I am, you can cut these up into small pieces.
Is this what they call the debris in New Orleans?
The debris, yes, yes, absolutely. That's pretty good. That's kind of an underground thing. And you can see that beautiful red ring that happened. So this means this was correctly smoked. And I can show you here. This is off the cap. Ooh, did I get you? This is off the cap, and you can see that beautiful ring that's just starting up here on the top. So again, this came off there, so we're going to reserve this as fatty, and then we're going to reserve this. The next thing you want to do is cut it straight down the middle and break it up into your lean and versus fat. So again, here's your lean. Okay, there's the ring that we talked about. And so this is, other people call it dry. It will have a little bit of a dry finish, but some people would argue that it has more of a meaty finish to it. So it's completely up to you. Here's that fat that I refuse to trim off that I'm going to leave on there just for a little bit of fat on the brisket. Over here, we're getting into lean, but you can see the fat, the intermuscular fat's going to start showing up a touch more. Now, we've got a couple of opinions on things and how we can do it. I like to kind of go diagonally at this point, a little bit against the grain.
All the way across.
All the way across, right. So I'm going to go ahead and cut this into a much more manageable space here.
This is our juicy.
This is our juicy, our fat. You can see all that fat that's rendered in there, things like that. It's really, really delicious. And then what I like to do, another neat trick so I don't rip my crust up, is actually flip it upside down, much like cutting a bell pepper. So you have the most sturdy part on the bottom, and then you're going to just slice through and be able to get that meat out of there. You've got that beautiful crust.
Beautiful.
And so it was really dark and whatnot, but now once you slice it, you get a little more contrast of the brisket being able to shine a little bit more.
I go for the fatty, if you're going to have brisket. Oh, look at that. Whoa.
So there's still a little give, but it doesn't shred. That's the important thing.
Oh my gosh, that's good. It doesn't need sauce.
No.
Nothing.
No, I don't think so either. It's got its own sauce.
Whoa. That's fabulous. Okay, just because the first bite was amazing doesn't mean the second one will, so by all means, I've got to go back for a second one.
That's awesome.
And maybe a third and a fourth. Chef, thank you.
Oh, it was my pleasure.
Awesome.